Good morning, Giulio. It's a pleasure to finally have you on our podcast. Giulio Coraggio, partner at DLA Piper in Italy, based in beautiful offices in Milan, with a questionable statue right across the road. Giulio's a good Giulio's Julia's a good friend of the podcast. Julia's a good friend of SiGMA. He's participated in a number of our conferences. I hope you'll be accepting our invitation for the November conference here in Malta.
Absolutely. As last
Perfect.
year,
Yes,
always.
we will have the same like last year. We'll have an Italy conference in order to also discuss what's going on in Italy, especially with the changes happening. And this is one of the main subjects we'd like to discuss today. Giulio, what is the situation in Italy right now, please?
Well, the situation is of continuous change. Law providing a new framework for the online gambling sector was published a few months ago, and is setting up new rules for online gambling licenses. We are in a very peculiar situation because all the licenses for remote gambling are going to expire at the end of the year, which means that before the end of the year, we're going to have a new tender for new licenses under conditions that are slightly different from those applicable so far. The biggest change is in pricing. So far, we had licenses lasting for 9 years, and with a price tag of 350,000 euros. Now the strategy of the government is completely changing. The prices are skyrocketing because we're going to have licenses for that have a cost, a one-off payment of 7 million euros. It will be paid into installments, one at the award of licenses, and one later on. But the goal of the regulator is to reduce considerably the number of operators in the market, because bigger operators are easier to control, because they have seen so far a proliferation of small websites that were operating in a gray area. There is no limit.
Loads of questions here to ask you. I need to stop you, so I start asking a few questions.
Yeah, sure.
So, we have let's go from the beginning. You talked about continuous change. We have a new law. So, we have a new law which will set up a new licensing process. Has that licensing process started, Giulio? That is, have current licensees or new potentially interested companies who want a license started working towards getting these new licenses?
No, the terms of the new licenses were notified to the European Commission last week. And as you know, there will be a 3-month period of so-called standstill, in which some EU member states can raise comments. And then in parallel, we have the accounting court that is scrutinizing the terms of the license. Malta is a country that normally raises questions. To be honest, I do not expect massive challenges. One of the challenges might be that the price is too high and might provide for a limitation to the entrance into the market.
So yeah, that was one of my other questions. Do you view that 7 million euros per license? And if I may ask, for how long are you paying that 7 million? Is it 9 years as well?
It's a one-off payment for a license that lasts for 9 years. It's 9 years, and it covers all the games that can be offered online.
So it's not like it's not like before you used to pay, for example, 300,000 for casino, 50,000 for bingo, and something extra for sports. Now 7 million will cover all the verticals.
Yeah, except for lottery games for which there are exclusive licenses, and licensed operators can become resellers of the license holders. Yeah, the price is the point on which this new regime might be attacked. The comment from operators is that it's true that the price tag is high. At the same time, we're talking about the second largest gambling market, Europe, after the UK. So it is a profitable market. It's also true that over 90% of the market share is in the hands of around 10, 20 operators, which have an economy of scale that allows them to afford this investment, or at least this is the idea of the regulator.
Yes, I understand. I understand. Okay, so let's say, so they notified last week. Now, according to TRIS, the Technical Regulation Directive, the time period, standstill period, is 3 months. So mid-July to mid-August, mid-September, mid-October. If one member state decides to send in a comment, it will not slow it down. But if someone sends in a reasoned opinion, that could slow it down by a further month. So August, mid-September, mid-October, it could be mid-November. So
Yeah,
is the Italian regulator aware of all this? Are there contingencies in place should a reasoned opinion be submitted, Giulio?
Well, the situation is that the regulator already stated that the current licenses are likely to be extended. As you know, Trevor, because we worked together on the previous tender, all licenses should go in continuity with the new licenses for those that commit to apply for a new license. So the possible scenario will be that by the end of the year, the regulator will ask operators to declare whether they commit to join the new tender that, as you said, is likely to be launched by the end of the year. For those that do not decide to join the tender, there will be a 6-month extension during which they need to allow players to withdraw their balances.
Okay. So they're only giving them 6 months to withdraw their balances, Giulio?
Yeah, that is what the new head of remote gambling at ADM, at the Italian gambling regulator, declared, which in a way is reasonable. I can tell you that the most likely scenario, Trevor, is that either now, and this is what we're seeing now, or in the first months of the coming year, we're going to see a lot of M&A transactions, because the smaller operators that cannot afford to get to the 7 million are going to be acquired by bigger operators, and so that you can acquire the licenses, a transfer of business deal, and then merge the two licenses. And then the local operators might become sort of affiliates of the larger operators.
I have a follow-up question on the licenses per se. Under the current licensing structure, with your one license, you can have a number of white labels which need to be registered with ADM. You can see them on the website. You can see that some licenses have 40, 45, 50 white labels. Will that remain a reality under the new regime, Giulio, or will that change?
You got the point, Trevor. This is the other biggest change in the market. As you said, there are
Giulio,
some.
Giulio, I grew up on the Italian market, as you know very well. Me and you grew old together on the Italian market.
Yeah. Absolutely. Trevor, you're right that there is a widespread practice within the Italian market of dissemination of white labels because the current regime allowed to have a limitless number of domain names under the same license, with the sole restriction that a player could have just one gambling account per license. Now the new regime completely changes this approach. You can have only one domain name associated to the license. There are some operators that are considering introducing second-level domain names. So you can have a top-level domain name that is the main brand of a company, and a second-level domain name that refers to, I don't know, to a TV brand, to a news brand, and whatever. Obviously, second-level domain names will be much less attractive. But
What do you mean by second level domain names? I'm not understanding this point,
so
Giulio.
it's going to be the www.company.com slash I don't know the news. Let's say
No,
news.
that's advertising. That's the advertising loophole. Let's not go there yet. What I'm trying to
No, but
understand is
it's not going to be advertising. There's going to be a second level domain name, like a sub page of a website, which refers to another brand, which is a gray solution, much less attractive because the homepage
this is why the Italian market is so much fun, because lawyers have a field day finding the loopholes. So just like in advertising, lawyers have already found a loophole to go around this one single domain name.
Well, Trevor, I wouldn't say it's a loophole. I would say that is a possibility granted by the law because it refers to the domain name and logo that needs to be on the homepage. Obviously, not an ideal scenario because having a subpage of a website referring to another brand is not going to be efficient on search engines, but rather than having these white labels dying, this is a kind of a backup solution.
Okay, all right. With regards to advertising, will there be any changes, Giulio, happening?
Well,
because currently you have an advertising ban, but you can go around it by, for example, promoting a news page for that particular brand or a sports page for that particular brand. So there are workarounds, and you can still see.
I wouldn't call them workarounds. These are, lawyers call them parallel lines of business.
Can see them in the stadiums still. I mean, if you're someone like me who follows Italian football and watches games in Italian stadiums, you can still see the brands in the stadiums.
Yeah, you can see the brands, and we are actually seeing many advertising deals of these parallel brands with large soccer teams. What happened last year, it's going to happen next year. One of the proposals that historically has been on the table before the beginning of each season of the Italian Soccer League is to introduce an exception to the advertising ban for just the display of the logo of the gambling operator on the jerseys of players. This hasn't passed so far. There was a lobby by the industry of the football industry in favor of that. I don't know whether it's gonna happen. It's all a political battle, as you can imagine.
I can imagine it's a political battle. Can I ask, how much did the cases of the former well, not former, because some of them played at the Euros, but the case of Fagioli of Juventus, of the guy who was with Milan and went to Newcastle, I forget his name. There were 3 players, I believe, who had gambling cases against them. They were not technically gambling on Italian websites, they were actually gambling on Curaçao licensees. How much has that impacted the advertising, any changes to the advertising regulations, and has it also impacted the manner in which this new legislation has come into play?
Well, I would say that it hasn't impacted at all, to be honest, because these football players were, as you said, operating in really black markets. So these were unlicensed websites, and the main risk that the government at some point shall acknowledge is that if the gambling advertising ban is so broad, then basically licensed and unlicensed operators are placed in the same position because they both cannot advertise. And mentioned, if the operator holds a Curaçao license and is based outside of the European Union, the enforcement against these operators are more unlikely to happen. What the new regulation is trying to introduce in order to tackle the issue is a payment blocking. So basically, transactions towards these websites, these unlicensed websites, should be blocked by payment providers and banks. But as you may recall, Trevor, since we've been working in this field for many years, the law providing for this payment blocking was introduced even, I think, 5, 6, 7 years ago, but never enforced because it required an enforcement decree that was never applied because of the lobby of the payment industry. I don't know whether this is going to happen again. It's true that the cases of the famous football players you mentioned before were beyond the normal black market operators, because apparently the money was transferred in cash through intermediaries that were on the ground. So these type of practices are difficult to intercept them. It's really a sort of criminal organization that is just, it goes beyond just an unlicensed website.
Okay, Giulio, I'm sorry, time's over. 20 minutes disappeared for us. It's a pleasure to have you, as always. I'll see you in November. You keep well.
Thank you, Trevor.
Ciao, ciao.
Bye.
Ciao, ciao, ciao.